Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever in the world you are, we are glad that you are with us. We wish to welcome you to the daily Bible study for the Silang Church of Christ. If you have been to our building, you know where we are. If, on the other hand, you are joining us from someplace else in the world or someplace else in the Philippines, we are located in the city of Silang, Cavite, Philippines, on Aguinaldo Highway at kilometer 42. That makes us about 30 miles or 50 kilometers south of downtown Manila. We are glad that you are with us, and we hope that our study is of benefit to you today. If this study is of benefit, please like, share, and subscribe so that other people can become aware of the teaching. Yesterday, we started a study on the Rock of Ages, but I went back and laid it out a little different. And today we're going to restart. Yesterday we spoke about the great I am, and we'll talk about that probably in a day or so. However, we're going to start with an introduction today. You see, all religious people in the world believe in some kind of a higher power. And even those that aren't particularly religious do believe as well. When we look closely at those beliefs, we see they come from one of two places. Either a person's concept of this higher power is based on the true revelation of God through the Bible, or it is based completely on their own human understanding. This is a very important difference. If humanity wants to be religiously united, then there must be a clear consensus of who God is. We must agree on how he has worked in the past and now. We also must agree on how he continues to work among men today. In order to discover this true God, it's not possible for us to just guess or make up ideas. Instead, we must consult the true revelation of his written word. If we want to establish a common definition of God that everyone can understand, then we must all agree upon a common dictionary of words. We cannot have a world where everyone makes up their own definitions for things like truth, justice, and righteousness. Through creation of this beautiful material world, God has clearly revealed his existence to all people. Through direct revelation to chosen men throughout history, he has revealed his actual presence. Through the permanent revelation of the written word in the Bible, he has revealed his inner attributes and his holy character. Finally, through Jesus, he has revealed that his true nature is love and grace. Through this love and grace, he actively seeks to bring true believers into his eternal presence. Because we all naturally seek to live forever and therefore escape death, we must begin our search for the one true and living God by looking at what he says about himself. Now, there's an old writer by the name of Voltaire. You may want to write that down, Voltaire. And this writer was right on a very specific point when he spoke about religion and mankind. He said, if God has created us in his image, we have more than returned the compliment. Truly, we live in a modern world that has created every imaginable God after the physical image and the behavior of men. We live in a very large world that has conceived a massive variety of different higher powers. For example, the Muslim or some other non Christian religionist will often tell us that they believe in the exact same God as the Christian. However, when we study the Bible, we would definitely differ with this assertion because their God has a completely different character. In the same way, the Hindu will simply add the Christian God to his huge catalog of many gods, in which he already believes. With this approach, we also strongly disagree. God cannot be the simple invention of human culture that has a hidden political agenda. God cannot be manufactured from complex minds of those who are set on destroying their fellow man through violent acts and atrocities. Furthermore, God cannot be broken into small theological pieces in order to cater to the changing whims of modern society, who just want to pacify their own guilty consciences. Our personal concept of God must in no way be determined by our flawed human inclinations and our selfish human desires. The big fact is that humans have an insatiable desire to create false gods that match their own human desires. This is the main reason why a scholar by the name of Emil Brunner wrote a very important statement. For every civilization or every period in history, it is true today. Brunner said, "Show me what kind of God you have, and I will tell you what kind of humanity you possess." Mankind has a very hard time learning the basic truth that God must not be molded like clay to fit the lifestyle of man. Instead, man must be completely transformed into the clean spiritual image of God. A God that is determined and defined by the local culture of those who bow down to it is not really God at all. It is simply a God that has been created after the bad behavior and the traditions of men. False gods that portray the changing culture of man are simply the product of human imagination. They are made by people who have manufactured a convenient higher power after their own daily behavior and their own personal beliefs. However, since the Christian bases his definition of God on the Bible, we could correctly assume that his understanding of God is completely different from any religion that does not use the Bible as its final resource. For this reason, the Christian does not believe in the false gods of those that were created by world religions. Those religions have rejected the Bible as the final authority in matters of faith. Too often, men have completely reversed the correct process of discovering God. Instead of listening to God, they have created religious beliefs after their own desires first. And then they search for a God that would conform to their new religion and say that their lifestyle is okay. This humanistic approach to discovering God, the one true God, will never work. This is wrong projection of thought, and it will always leave a person with a small God. Why? Because that God will be subservient to the limited mental capacity and the selfish desires of those who manufactured the religion in the first place. Any true, honest search for God must begin with God himself. If there is a supreme God, then certainly this God would reveal himself to his creation. It is our main task, therefore, to find and investigate the direct revelation from God. We must completely set aside our own stubborn inclinations about who we think God should be. We must simply accept the clear revelation of who God says he is in his own book. To put it simply, God does not believe in the false gods that we create in our minds. True Christians believe in a deeply loving and merciful God who is perfectly just. Because he is just, he deals with every single human without any respect to that person. He does not favor the rich. He does not favor the powerful or the wise over those of the poor and the humble. He is a sovereign God whose primary means to encourage man to do right is his beautiful character and his perfect expression of love. For this exact reason, John wrote some beautiful words. Go to 1 John chapter 4 and verse 16. 1 John 4:16, Rochelle.
First John chapter 4, verse 16 reads 16. So we have come to know and to believe the love that God has for us. God is love, and whoever abides in love abides in God, and God abides in him.
Whoever abides, meaning lives in love, lives in God, and God in him. Now, John is going to be even more definitive concerning our daily understanding of God when he wrote 1 John chapter 4 and verse 8. Cora, 1 John chapter 4, verse 8.
First John chapter 4, verse 8.
Yes, please.
3. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love.
You see, what did he say? He who does not love does not know God. Any religion in the world that is based on anything other than this great principle of holy love cannot be true. Neither can such religions ever give us a correct, healthy understanding of the Creator. A loving God does not reveal an unloving faith to his children. The fact that the essential nature of God is love helps us immensely in our search for through the massive catalog of world religions today. It allows us to easily discover the one true God. Different world religions and different denominations of churches that do not focus on that by which God works to move man, that being love, cannot be true. Faith that is revealed by God. Religions, therefore, that try to justify what is unloving, what is violent, or what is unkind, simply cannot be founded on the revelation of a God of love. We must carefully study through all those specific scriptures in the Bible that give direct literary definitions of the character of God. However, we must remember a warning. Unless we are fully prepared to portray that love in our own daily lives, the loving nature of God, our intellectual knowledge of the scriptures will only take us so far. Hard-hearted and unloving students will never come to a true saving knowledge of the God of love that is in the Bible. Their academic pride blocks them from seeing the heart of the author of the Bible. God will allow us to use the Bible alone in our sincere efforts to discover who he is. In other words, the God of the Bible will settle for no other supposed written revelation or extra book in order to define his holy nature. This means someone cannot use the Quran or the Book of Mormon or any other religious literature in order to discover the true God of the Bible. Those other religious authorities can only be man's flawed definition of who he thinks God is. If we are to study, truly discover the God of the Bible, then we must limit our studies to the Bible of this God alone. When it comes to discovering the God of the Bible, the text restricts our studies to its own pages, for through it alone, he is defined who he is. Romans chapter 1 and verse 20. Romans chapter 1 and verse 20. Giselle?
Romans chapter
One.
1, verse 20. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made, so they are without excuse.
You see, someone might refer to God's beautiful revelation of himself through that which is physically created as natural revelation. Through natural revelation, God has assumed that humans have enough basic common sense, and I don't like that word because it seems common sense is not so common anymore, to understand the complex environment in which we live today. This world did not spontaneously generate from nothing. It was beautifully created, and therefore it clearly carries the distinct marks of a master creator and a designer who has the supreme power to create. However, we have to move past the physical environment in which we live to discover the true deep nature of the God of nature. If we do not, our understanding of God will be limited to what is known as empirical feedback. That being what we receive from the physical world. A host of pagan religions today are limited to worshiping rocks, rivers, stars, and trees. And these are the very things that God intended to simply ignite our sense of wonder so that we would search for his direct verbal revelation. Sadly, many people have tripped over the created rocks of nature, and therefore they have found it completely impossible to discover the rock of ages. Although God has revealed his existence through the created world, we must never terminate our search for God at that level of the created world. Nature is only an empirical launching pad from which our minds must be lifted into the specific revelation of the God who created that launching pad. Therefore, unless a person arrives at the Bible in his or her personal investigations of who God is, he or she will never discover the one true God. Does this mean that Christians has the Bible, that he fully understands everything and all that God is? Not at all. It does mean, however, that he has a massive advantage over those who grope after God through the dark maze of human philosophies and religious traditions. But at the end of the day, even the most diligent Christian must confess his inability to fully comprehend an incomprehensible God. In his writing, De Veritate, the thinker Thomas Aquinas was absolutely right when he said the highest knowledge we can have of God in this life is to know that he is above all we can think concerning him. We must allow ourselves to be challenged concerning who we think God is. We must first break down our old misconceptions of God in order to reconstruct a true biblical understanding of the nature of God. Therefore, as we take this mental journey, we must allow the Bible to be our only dictionary for our definition of God. We already saw 1 John chapter 4, verse 8. Anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love. And we've also already looked at 1 John chapter 4 and verse 16. For we have come to know and to believe the love that God has for us. God is love, and whoever abides in love, abides means lives, abides in love, abides in God, and God abides in him. In order to ensure clarity throughout this process, we must establish some fixed meanings for the core terms that are introduced in the beginning phase of our study. So, Psalm 19:1, Psalm 19:1. Eileen?
Ayun.
Psalm 91.
Psalm 19. Ay, sorry.
Psalm 19:1 reads, "The heaven declare the glory of God, and the skies above pro- proclaim his handiwork."
Okay. So, what is natural revelation? What is natural revelation? Jump ball.
Revelation is to reveal something. Natural means natural, a common one.
Natural revelation. This is the way that God shows all humanity that he exists and the power he has by using the physical design, order, and beauty of the created universe in general and our earth in specific. 2 Timothy 3:16, Fred. 2 Timothy 3:16.
No.
Second Timothy 3:16. This is I'll try by memory. 2 Timothy 3. All scripture is God inspired and useful for teaching, correcting, rebuking, and training in righteousness.
Very good. So, what is special revelation? What is special revelation? We saw what natural revelation is. What is special revelation?
Special revelation is the revealing of God and God's truth through inspiration, meaning the involvement of the Holy Spirit inspiring the apostles with
Very
truth.
good. Special revelation is the direct, clear communication of God's specific character, laws, and promises given to chosen men and recorded forever in the written text of the Bible. Psalm 50, verse 21, Vanessa.
Psalm 50:21 reads, "These things you have done, and I have been silent. You threw that I was one like yourself. But now I rebuke you and lay the charge before you."
So, what is human imagination? What is human imagination?
Just the thinking of the human, thinking of
Very
their
good.
own mind.
Human imagination is the spiritual mistake of inventing a false idea of God based on personal feelings, cultural habits, and human desires instead of studying the Bible. Isaiah chapter 8 and verse 20, Terence. Isaiah 8:20.
Isaiah 8:20 reads, to the teaching and to the testimony, if they will not speak according to this word, it is because they have no dawn.
Okay. So, what
Mhm.
is a common dictionary? What is a common dictionary? A common dictionary is the term we will use for accepting the Bible as the only true source that defines words like love, justice, sin, and holiness without changing them in order to fit our modern society. Acts chapter 17, verse 27. Abby?
Uh, mm, Acts chapter 17, verse 27 says, God did this so that men would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from each one of us.
Though he is not far from each one of us. So, what is an empirical launching pad? What is an empirical launching pad? Empirical launching pad. When we use that throughout this study, this will be the role of the physical world, which is meant to surprise us and make us ask questions so that we start looking for the spiritual creator who made it. Job chapter 11 and verse 7. CJ?
Luke chapter 11, verse 7 reads, "Can you find out the deep things of God? Can you find out the limit of the Almighty?"
Okay. Now, I'm glad you got this one, CJ. It's a little bit of a complicated question. Why must we search for the one true and living God? Why must we begin with divine revelation rather than the limits of human philosophical speculation?
The limits of the Almighty.
Here's the answer. Human philosophical speculation is completely limited to what human beings can see, touch, feel, smell, taste. In a broken physical world, because God is an infinite spiritual being who lives beyond the physical universe, human logic can only guess about what his true nature is. Therefore, we need God to speak to us first. He must send a message down to us through revelation so that we can know the absolute truth without making mistakes. Galatians chapter 1 and verse 8. Galatians 1:8, Francine.
Galatians chapter 1 verse 8 reads, "But even if we or an angel from heaven should preach to you a gospel contrary to the one we preach to you, let him be accursed."
Okay. How does the demand for a single uniform scriptural dictionary protect a text from becoming a tool for cultural self-justification? How does a demand for a single scriptural dictionary protect a text from becoming a tool for cultural self-justification? Jump ball.
Because it will give you a false meaning, especially nowadays, that it could give you an inappropriate definition.
Okay. Try this. When a group of people or a whole culture is allowed to change the definition of simple Bible words like love, good, or
Mhm.
justice to match their own behavior,
There
the
you go.
Bible becomes useless. It just becomes a mirror that agrees with
Mhm.
whatever they want to do. A fixed, strict Bible dictionary forces our minds to submit to God's definition. And this prevents us from using the Bible to excuse our sin or to support our own cultural agenda. And with that,
42.
stop the recording. Ernest?
Recording.